at home that is going to be 13 soon. So he's about the age that I was when I did the movie, which is a little freaky at this point.
Now, he doesn't sound very little. 13 is not little.
He's little, trust me. He's a tiny kid. Yeah, he's really he's skinny little beanpole of a child.
Hold on to it. Tell him to hold on to it. Stay that way forever.
Well, every time I see him, it feels like he grew about 3 inches taller, but I'm like, no, can I just squish you back down? But no, he's a great kid, and he's what keeps me going every day. And other than that, I live in Philadelphia. I do conventions. I do small parts in independent films here and there. I'm always open to anything that comes about, but I am considered disabled, so I stay at home and take care of my health, take care of myself, take care of my son, and all my rats and my dog.
That's the most important thing. You got to take care of yourself before you take care of anything else. That's just a good general rule across the board.
Yeah.
Before we left, we have a 6-year-old, and she got handed down an iPad, and her sister figured out how to put iMessage on the iPad. So we were able to text message a 6-year-old when we got here the other night.
Yep.
And I put on Facebook, I was like, I'm not really ready for this. I can't imagine having a 13-year-old, much less now we have a 6-year-old, and I was at a text message. It's just super weird.
And they work it better than we do. They work those iPads it's like a futuristic movie with like the captain of an airship. They're just like, it's amazing.
A book? What's a book? I don't know.
Yeah, they're like, book. I can read it on my iPad.
Well, why is it not swiping the right way?
I can't swipe the pages over. What's going on? I want to zoom in.
It's good. How did you get your start in acting?
My start in acting actually started with a trip to Children's Hospital. I, about 2 years old, started constructing sets in my living room, and I would move furniture to the point where I got a hernia infection from it, and I had to be rushed to the hospital and have surgery done. So after that, my mom was like, well, I think this is something she likes to do, and we're not going to be able to stop her, so let's just help her. And from that point on, I just kind of, anything that was involved with school or camp or any side thing that I could get into that had to do with drama, I was there. I did a lot of dance growing up, ballet and hip hop and jazz and such, and singing lessons and just anything I could get into, but not for the... Most people think that I'm like that child star that the mother was pushing into. It was quite the opposite. I was like, Mom, I want to do this. And she was like, it's not going to get you anywhere. And I was like, I don't care. I want to do it. So it just became my life.
Sounds like you have an awesome mom.
My mom's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Not many parents are very supportive of that. I mean, you know, as a dad, I'm like, hey, I would like my kid to grow up and do this, this, and this. And you know, with the political climate it is what it is, you know, we said, hey, you know, you could grow up and be president. Yeah. And her response is, nah. Well, you could, Dad, but I don't want to be. Like, no, thank you.
My mother always had a saying. She always said, don't tell her she can't do it. Because as soon as you tell her she can't, she'll show you she can. So that was her thing. My father was very supportive throughout my whole life and still is. It brought tears to his eyes when he saw the film for the first time, and it was very emotional to see him so proud of me over something. I never expected to be able to make him so proud of me, but he was and still is. He comes to see me at conventions and he just is like, this blows me away. This what it is just incredible. So he was an amazing support system and taught me about finances and, like, you know, being an adult at 13, he kind of taught me that.
Well, to be thrust into the film industry, you sort of needed to be.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, I had a checking account and a credit card and a financial advisor at 13 years old, and my dad's like, all right, you know, we got to sit down and learn how to balance a checkbook, how to not spend things you don't need to spend on. And my mom was quite the opposite. My mom was like, oh, you got a credit card? Let's go to Walmart and get crafts and do things. And, you know, they were just very different people, but they both supported me in very different ways and helped me along in those ways.
Nice. What was, I guess you did theater before? Did you do any theater?
Lots of theater. Lots of theater. Yeah, I did. Every year that I was in school, I was in at least 2 plays. And then in the summer, I would go to camp and do at least a play or 2. It just became my existence. I couldn't breathe if I wasn't acting. That was just the way I felt. Like if I didn't have something I was working on, some lines I was memorizing, some character I was developing, I didn't feel whole.
That makes sense. So what was it that got you into this role in The Crow? How did The Crow come about for you?
Well, I actually did some open call work, just going to open call auditions at first, and once my grandmother, who was really my main support system during The Crow, she was the person that took me to all my auditions, she took me to the set of The Crow to film. She was pretty convinced that once I did some open calls, it would be like, oh, this is a nightmare, I want out of this field, I didn't know it was like this. And so she just figured, let me do that. I did a few open calls, and then I said, I love this, I want to do more. And she was like, no! And she got me a manager, and I went to, my first audition was The Crow, that I had a manager with. And I went, and about 4 callbacks later, I ended up getting the part. So it took quite a while. It took a few months of auditioning, but it was just something like as soon as I read the part, I was like, oh, I love this girl. I want to be her. I want to do this part.
What was the audition process like?
The audition process started slow. You came in, you read some lines, you walked out. That was about it. After a couple auditions, though, they start to like ease you into things. You know, they would say to me, so how do you feel about being in the rain all the time?
Literally every day.
Like all day, every day. And if it's cold too, would that bother you? And have you ever ridden a skateboard? Or how do you feel about heights? Are you afraid of falling? You know, and everything they asked me, it was pretty much easy. I had never skateboarded before, but I was like, learn. I don't mind. You know, I don't care about heights. I don't care about the rain. And after the 3rd audition, I came back for the 4th, and I actually brought my little brother's monkey in with me because I knew it was like a really tense situation, like this was coming down to the moment of whether I was going to get this part or not. So I basically walked up to the door, the woman assistant had walked in to introduce me into the room, and I didn't walk in after her, and they all got silent, and everybody just kind of sat there, and I stuck my hand in the door with the monkey in, and I squeezed it, and it went, ooh, ah! And everybody in the room just stopped, and they looked up, and I walked in, and I said, tension breaker, had to be done. And they just started cracking up, and they were like, this kid's hilarious. So I sat down, I read my lines, we did more interviewing about what I could and couldn't do, and I went home, and a little while later, I was called and told I was hired.
Wow. What was it like as a 13, 14-year-old kid walking onto this set? I mean, obviously, at that time, no one knew the pop cultural significance this film would have.
Yeah.
But I know me as a 13-year-old kid, I was worried about like playing basketball and hanging out with my friends, and that's about it. I mean, aside from the financial aspects of it, you know, with balancing a checkbook and being an adult, what was it like knowing that going in that this was a work that they thought you could do? What kind of expectations did you put on yourself to be able to do this?
Well, being that I had done so much in my past for theater and had put so much of my heart into things, I felt like I was ready for that, and there was a lot of expectation on set. I knew that from walking in, and it was a big set, and you walk in and you're like, wow, like this is a lot to take in. You know, they have just huge amounts of clothing for you to try on to pick the right outfits for you, and they're going to mess with your hair over and over again to see what they want to do with that, and they're going to do makeup on you over and over again until they get your face right and all that kind of stuff. But I handled it really well. I just kind of fell right into the groove. Like as soon as I got in there and started to talk to people, I was like, this is not more foreign than anything else I've ever done. It's just going to be on film now. And as you said, I didn't know it would even be out in theaters, let alone something this big. It was just, I'm going to do this part, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, and I'm going to try to impress the way I always do when I'm on, a stage. I'm going to do it on a set. And so that's what I did. I was myself when I wasn't on, screen, and then when they put me in front of the camera, I just snapped right into Sarah, and that's who I was.
And I know me as a 13 or 14-year-old kid, I would have been a little nuts if I had the opportunity to be in the same room for multiple times with a guy like Ernie Hudson. I'm sure you had seen Ghostbusters at that point in your life. What was that like for you?
Well, there was a few people I recognized when I got there. One of them being Tony Todd, because I had seen Candyman.
Yeah.
And I
do have awesome parents. Oh my gosh.
I did. I had great parents. But I saw him, and we talked, and we were talking very normally, and I was standing I'll never forget, because I was standing at the bottom of the stairs of my dressing room, and he said something along the lines of, when I was filming Candyman, and I went, and I just started backing up slowly up the stairs, and I just looked at him and I said, you scared the bejesus out of me. Like, I can't even look at you right now. And he just laughed. He's like, no, I'm a gentle giant. I'm a big guy, but I'm not scary. And I was like, okay, all right, get it together. Like, this is just a character he plays.
He's still creepy. I'm sorry. I don't care how gentle of a giant he is.
He's the sweetest, most loving teddy bear I've ever met in my life.
He's a really nice guy, but it still comes across as creepy. But he's a nice guy. He definitely
looks scary and sounds scary. But when I see him, he just squeezes me and hugs me like a big teddy bear, and I love it. But same with Michael Berryman. I had seen Weird Science, and I was like, I know this face. Where do I know this face from? And Ernie Hudson, I knew. They had told me he was in Ghostbusters. I'm like, cool, working with a Ghostbuster, rock on. What's up with that? Brandon, I didn't even know who he was or who his father was.
Yeah.
Which to him was like a blessing, because he had been his whole life just seen as this son of somebody.
Right.
And he introduced himself to me from 50 feet away, I think. We were driving in a car, and I saw him standing at the makeup area, and I just see hands waving in the air, and I'm like, what is... And he's going, Rochelle, I'm Brandon, nice to meet you. And I just reached my hands out, and I said, nice to meet you too. Once we were actually together on set, and he explained to me, like, don't you know who my father is? And I'm like, no. Dude, I don't know who you are. I don't know who your dad is. I don't know what you want me to tell you. And he said, no, that's amazing. Like, I'm so glad that you don't know.
Wasn't it great before the internet?
Yeah.
We were just like, oh,
definitely.
I don't know who you are. That's cool. Yeah.
And I had seen Bruce Lee films because my father was a big Bruce Lee fan, but I couldn't put the two together. I wouldn't have known at 13 who the heck Bruce Lee was and why that was significant in any way. But he was just so excited to know that I was like, what I call it is a clean slate.
Right.
My son was a clean slate for me. He didn't know I was in a movie until he was 11 years old. So he knew nothing about The Crow. Nothing. He knew nothing about The Crow. He knew nothing about Brandon Lee. He knew nothing about Bruce Lee. So he was a clean slate. And when I said to him, Mommy did a movie, and he was like, yeah. And then he came to a convention and saw people come up to me and talk to me, and he was like, Mom, you're famous.
I was like, what movie did you do, Mom?
Yeah. He's like, why are these people? And I'm like, it's all right, we'll watch it. So we went home and we put it on, and I sat there grinding my teeth and biting my nails and just like, oh God, please let him like this movie. Please let him like this movie. And it ended, and he saw the kissing part, and he goes, kissing. And I said, oh, it's just the end. It's okay. And it finished, and the credits started to roll, and he turned to me and he goes, can we watch it again?
Yes.
And I said, that's it. I made the best fan I could make in my life was my son. So I understood what Brandon felt that moment was. For me, I was like a clean slate for him. I knew nothing of him, so I could take him for who he was. just as he was in front of me, without any other thoughts in my mind of other things from the past. So I think that was pretty amazing to him, and I find it to be pretty cool.
The Crow is one of those movies that when you're introduced to it, you're not really sure what you're getting into, you know. And I can't imagine being 14 and being in the middle of that, you know. But as a teenager, when I watched it, was introduced to it, I didn't really know what to expect. When you read through the script, what all did you expect this to be?
I expected it to be very dark. I expected all the things that were pretty obvious about the way it was described. But I didn't expect such a, I don't know, like such a feeling from it. Like when I watched it for the first time in California, when they played the premiere for me and my father, we flew out to California and we went to a little private theater. They didn't have a big premiere, of course, because of his death. So we just individually went and watched it separately. And me and my father went in and we watched it together. And I remember the beginning part where I was narrating, I was like, okay, I remember this from doing the voiceovers. And then it went into the next part, and then when he starts to come into the film and it starts to rev up with the music, I just remember my body getting like a feeling, like I got goosebumps everywhere, and I was like, what the hell did I do here? This is amazing. Like, I can't believe this is what I'm seeing. And still to this day, I watch it and I'm just like, you know, for this being a 23-year-old movie, it's spectacular.
It holds up really well. I mean, really, really well. Not a lot of film does that, but
yeah, it really just
does.
It hit me, and not because I filmed it, but because had I not filmed it and watched it, I would have still felt that way. It was just, it pulled me in, just like it would any other watcher. You know, anybody else that was watching that movie felt that same pull towards it, and I felt it too, and I was just so amazed to be a part of that.
Does it seem that maybe it was a little before its time?
I think it was. I think it was definitely before its time. I think nowadays, like, we have all this CGI and this crazy stuff that we do, but this was like art, you know?
Yeah.
This was a guy that, you know, the director, he went out there and he made things look incredible without all that technology to do it. You know, the scene where Brandon shoots the gun and the rings fly out of the tip of the gun and you can see the rings flying out of the gun. I mean, like, who does that without CGI nowadays? Nobody. That's just not heard of. So I was just so impressed by everything, and everybody that worked on it just worked so stinking hard that you could really feel it. You could like smell the sweat coming out of that movie. Like, people worked so hard on it.
There's another film from around that time, Dark City. I don't know if anybody's aware of that, but those two movies always stand out to me as almost out of place in time, because they do seem like maybe they really were well before their time.
Yeah, and Dark City was also Alex Proyas, so that's, you know, another testament to what a great director he was. He was amazing. He just had an eye for art, and I don't call it movie making when it comes to him. I call it art.
Not when it looks like that. Not the end result. No.
No, and you know, the fact that they had Robert Zuckerman as their still photographer. He's the top photographer right now in our country, and he's amazing. He just did these beautiful luster prints of things that were just captured moments and facial expressions, and just everybody just did such a great job, and everybody put their art form into it. They didn't just come and make a movie, you know, they came and they put their heart into it, and that meant a lot.